Hey, this is Brooke, functional medicine dietitian specializing in fertility, and this is the Fertility Dietitian podcast, where I help you uncover the barriers that are preventing you from optimizing your fertility and teach you how to work with your body to finally take home a healthy baby. Each week, I will be diving into different topics on fertility and sharing my perspective on physiology, metabolic health, nutrition, and lifestyle approaches that have helped hundreds of couples get pregnant even after years of heartache. My goal is to empower you with the knowledge you need to take back control of your fertility. Happy listening. Hello, and welcome back to the Fertility Dietitian podcast. Today, we're unpacking a buzzy wellness trend, cold plunging. You've probably heard about it, seen a lot of hype about it, ice baths, breathwork, big promises potentially. But when it comes to female fertility, the emerging picture matches what many of us suspect. Cold plunging is not the superpower habit for women trying to conceive. The timing and context matter a lot. So we're going to talk a lot about the context and the timing for women. For male fertility, though, it's a little bit of a different story. So this is another trend that is based on research around men or non-cycling women. So it takes the nuance out of what's happening biologically. But there may be some targeted benefits for men, especially around temperature management for sperm. So we'll talk about fertility-specific benefits and just walk through the physiology, the research that we do have, and where the gaps are, and really just talk about how to make a nuanced decision for yourself. Cold plunging is typically 2 to 10 minutes in a 38 to 55 degree tub. The body's immediate response is cold shock. So there's a big sympathetic surge, a breath reflex, a peripheral vasoconstriction, so blood vessels are constricting, and a spike in catecholamines like norepinephrine. So acute sessions can actually bump stress hormones with regular exposures, and people often do adapt with regular exposures, showing lower cortisol over time, but sustained norepinephrine spikes after each immersion. So that's part of why people report feeling more alert or upbeat afterwards. There's this rush of adrenaline and stress, essentially, that happens. Every plunge can be a stressor for your body, and you have to think of this as using up the energy budget to overcompensate for this stressor. Adaptation can absolutely occur, and that's really where we see more of the metabolic benefits, but the spike physiology never totally disappears. Let's talk specifically about women. So for women, two things make cold plunging uniquely different when comparing to cold plunging for men. So our core temperature changes across our menstrual cycle. After ovulation, progesterone increases our core body temp about 0.3 to 0.7 degrees higher. Your luteal phase runs warmer on purpose. That thermic shift is really part of creating an environment that's going to support implantation and early development of a baby. Forcing aggressive cooling during this phase may actually be fighting your biology's intentional warmth. All right. Chinese medicine tells us that we want to keep our feet warm, to keep our womb warm. Dumping into a cold plunge after ovulation is not the greatest idea. Energy allocation and safety signals are something else we need to think about as well. So ovulation and implantation are very energy intensive, and your brain is constantly scanning to think about whether we have enough resources and we are safe enough to build a tiny human. Acute cold is a stressor. There's vasoconstriction, shivering, or even non-shivering thermogenesis, a sympathetic surge, so nervous system shift into a stress state. And in women, cold exposure also interacts with ovarian hormones. So our estrogen or progesterone and shifting shivering thresholds and thermoregulation, especially across the cycle. So what that means is that your thermal response changes depending on what cycle phase that you're in, whether you're in your follicular phase or your luteal phase. Okay. So if we dive a little bit deeper and think about direct reproductive effects, this is what we see. Human data, specifically looking at cold plunges around ovulation or luteal sufficiency, is really limited. But we do see animal and emerging translational work suggesting that cold exposure can promote or increase inflammatory changes in reproductive tissues and disrupt reproductive hormone signaling, making cycles longer, impairing ovarian function in some models. It doesn't prove that there's harm in women, but it's a flag that suggests strong caution around cold plunging when trying to conceive. So let's talk more about the stress and hormone picture. Acute cold can actually increase our stress hormones, which are our cortisol and our catecholamines. Repeated exposures can lower baseline cortisol while still triggering norepinephrine spikes each session. So if you already have signs of HPA axis overdrive, like poor sleep, anxiety, underfueling, high training, cold plunging can be just one more stressor that actually tips the balance away from ovulation friendly support and safety. All right. So there's still a lot of nuance to think about around this. Some chirotherapy studies or cold plunging studies, which are short term and not specifically designed around fertility endpoints, but they do report mood or sleep improvements, which are real and relevant for overall well-being and fertility. But again, they don't establish trying to conceive safety or benefits. So we're not looking at those outcomes specifically. If you personally feel better, we still want to align timing and timing of doing the plunge and the amount of time that you're in the plunge with your cycle and your energy status. Okay. So this is not saying that it's a never, but we just need to bring in all that nuance and really think about what's going to give you the best outcomes possible. So if we're going to be cycle savvy, safety first, helping our body feel safe first is really what I recommend when I'm talking about this with my clients. So if you are actively trying to conceive this cycle, your follicular phase, which is right after menstruation into ovulation, if you love cold exposure, you're well fed, you're sleeping well, you're not overtraining, brief and moderate cool exposures outside of your ovulatory window may actually be acceptable and supportive. So think short, not extreme, finish warm. So if you can jump into a sauna, a hot shower, that can be supportive. No post-plunge shivering marathons, okay? Trying to avoid that. So trying to get warm as soon as possible and prioritizing nourishment and warmth is going to be really supportive around that cold plunge itself. During the fertile window and ovulation, so your fertile window starts with that cervical mucus, egg white cervical mucus, and then ends with the temperature increase, your basal body temp increase. You want to skip plunging during this time. Let your body allocate resources to supporting follicle growth, the LH surge, the rupture of the follicle, which is actually ovulation itself, tubal transport of that egg, and no extra sympathetic spikes needed in that time frame. Okay. Luteal phase or after ovulation, this is a time you really want to focus on heat. Okay, create consistent warmth, stable blood sugar, deep sleep, and calm environment. So avoiding those cold plunges is ideal. Your body is running warmer on purpose, and we want to let progesterone do its thing to support implantation and continued development of the embryo. Okay, so follicular phase, before that, before that fertile window is really the best time for women. Again, if you are well fed and sleeping well, not overtraining, going for that brief exposure, moderate exposure. So not 38 degrees is not what I'd recommend. Closer to that 50, 55 degree time or temp range is going to be more ideal. And red flags to avoid cold plunging entirely include a history of HA or hypothalamic amenorrhea, or irregular or absent ovulation, low calorie intake, if you have low body fat, if you have high training load right now, if you have a history of thyroid imbalance, cardiovascular issues, or if you just feel terrible after cold plunging, it's a good idea to listen to your body and not do it. But when in doubt, just skip it when you are actively trying to conceive. If you're early pregnancy or think you could be pregnant, pass. Do not cold plunge. This is not the time to add more stress to your body. We have zero high quality human data showing that it's going to benefit pregnancy outcomes, and theoretical risks are not worth it. If you keep a cold ritual for mental health, swap to ending showers that are cool. Okay, so if you like that like cool exposure, don't go icy, just go cool. And cap it at 30 to 60 seconds to avoid interruption with the luteal or fertile windows. And then followed by rewarming. Think about hot tea, warm meal, cozy layers. You want to train your nervous system that non-thermal stress resilience tools are primarily things like breathwork and sunlight and strength work and consistent sleep. Okay, we don't have to use temperature to ignite those feelings, right, of nervous system resilience. So cool exposure can be supportive if we're thinking about brisk walks outside. Being a little cool briefly is going to actually be supportive of mitochondrial health. And we do see some of those metabolic benefits in men when we're talking about cold plunging. But a cold plunge is a different, more dramatic impact than walking outside and being a little cold. Okay. So a lot of nuance to think about here. Cycle timing definitely makes a difference, as well as how safe and nourished your body feels going into that cold plunge. All right. So now let's talk a little bit more about male fertility and cold plunging or cool exposure. Sperm production happens best a few degrees below core body temperature. That's why men are designed the way they are, to store the sperm outside of the body. Chronic or even intermittent scrotal heat lowers semen volume, sperm count, motility, or how that sperm is swimming is impacted negatively. Morphology, or the shape of the sperm, is also impacted negatively. It's damaged. And all of that is linked to delayed time to conception. Okay, that's why things like hot tubs and saunas, heated seats, even tight synthetic underwear, and laptops on your lap are not great for the preconception period for men. Targeted cooling can be supportive. So there's classic and contemporary evidence that scrotal cooling can actually improve semen parameters in some men. Trials using nocturnal scrotal cooling devices or cooling patches showed feasibility and parameter improvements in subsets of men with abnormal semen analyses. So it's not a magic bullet, and the results definitely vary, but overall, a cooler environment is supportive for overall sperm health. All right, but what about the actual plunge, the cold plunge? Cold exposure can stimulate mitochondrial adaptations, which, if you remember, the mitochondria is that little powerhouse of the cell that supports energy creation, which is super important for both male and female fertility. It actually increases thermogenic and oxidative processes, especially in brown fat, which helps with the breakdown or burning of that fat and potentially raises metabolic efficiency as well. But targeted is better than extreme when we're talking about actively trying to conceive. So whole body ice baths are unnecessary and can actually trigger a reaction that pulls the testes closer to the body during acute cold shock. So the evidence is showing us that avoiding extreme heat, like hot tubs, saunas, heated car seats, laptops on the lap, is important for sperm health. Choosing breathable underwear is important to let the boys breathe, and keep like temperature more regulated. So avoid prolonged sitting without breaks, also for the same reason. Targeted cooling can be supportive. So built-in devices or simple strategies to support like looser clothing and cooler sleep environments can be supportive. Being mindful of lifestyle factors that compound heat and stress, like be overweight. If you need to lose weight, that can definitely help with temperature regulation in your body, and keeping sperm at a temperature that is better for them. Tight clothing and intense cycling without breaks are all lifestyle things that we need to think about to maintain an appropriate temperature as well. So for men with suboptimal semen parameters, we need to bring a lot of nuance into how extreme we want that cold exposure to be. But in general, targeted cooling exposure can be supportive, alongside making sure that you're nourished, focusing on good quality sleep and a lot of antioxidant support as well. So to wrap it all up for both men and women, for women, cold plunging is not a fertility booster. The physiology of your cycle and the limited data that we have argue for caution more than anything. If you want to experiment a little, just avoid the fertile window and the luteal or post-ovulatory phases. Keep it short, not extreme, and then rewarm immediately. Prioritize the signals that tell your brain it's safe and nourished. These signals are going to support good quality ovulation and better support sustaining a pregnancy. For men in the preconception period, cooler is generally better for sperm. Reducing heat exposures and considering targeted scrotal cooling if semen parameters are off is going to be overall supportive. Again, and if you want to dabble in more plunges, just be mindful of how nourished you are, and how you're supporting your body overall for providing it the ingredients that it needs to really support those sperm. For everyone, remember that many benefits of cold exposure may come from broader healthy lifestyle clusters as well. We see with cold plunging itself that it's the more consistent exposure that has those bigger results of improving metabolic health and mitochondrial health overall. Whereas the one-off exposures actually increase stress in more of a negative way. You can get alertness and mood benefits through sleep, light, breath, and movement, without adding the cold extremes at the exact moments we want the body to feel the safest, which is when we are trying to conceive. So I'll be linking a bunch of research that I referenced within this podcast. And if you found this helpful, please share it with a friend or a partner who's curious about cold plunging in relation to fertility. And if you're looking for more individualized support, don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to support you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fertility Dietitian podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review to let me know what topics you want more of or less of. If you want to keep learning, subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out my website for more info on my private coaching program, Master Your Fertility, or my membership community, Fertility Blueprint. And don't forget my digital store. Come say hi on YouTube and Instagram. See you in the next episode.